Picture this. You're right in the middle of a super stressful day. Maybe you just had a pretty heated argument, or you're just feeling this deep, overwhelming sense of frustration. Have you ever just stopped in that moment and asked yourself, why do we suffer? I mean, it's the ultimate universal human experience, right? Whether it's inner turmoil or bumping heads with the people around us, suffering is just something we all have to navigate. But what if the actual source of that pain isn't what we've always assumed it is?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through today's topic. We're going to be digging into some source material that offers a really profound paradigm shift regarding our true nature as human beings. The text we're examining proposes that by completely rethinking who we are and adopting a very specific practice of self-reflection, we can actually cut off suffering right at its root and find some genuine, lasting happiness.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the root cause of suffering, move on to the composite of body and spirit, the true purpose of sleep, reflection that leads to happiness, practical methods of reflection, and finally, purification, not superpowers.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the root cause of suffering. Our source material actually flips a lot of what we think we know completely upside down. Obviously, the world is full of dilemmas and agony. But the true starting point for all this suffering, the text points directly at our own ego and attachments. It's our vanity, that constant nagging desire to be seen favorably by everyone else. The authors suggest that when our public image takes a hit or we feel downgraded, we get sad, we want to hide, and that creates an immense amount of internal pain.
But here's the kicker, and it's where we usually make our biggest mistake. When that emotional pain hits, human nature basically dictates that we look outward. We point fingers at our environment, our bad luck, or the people around us. But the text explicitly notes that doing this, it only keeps us trapped in a cycle of suffering. Because, think about it, as long as the fault lies out there, we have literally zero power to fix what's broken in here.
Moving on to Section 2, composite of body and spirit.
So how do we break free from this cycle of playing the blame game? Well, the source material argues we need a massive paradigm shift in how we view ourselves. On the left, you've got the standard physical view, right? The idea that we are just biological machines and our minds are nothing more than brain chemistry. But on the right, the text introduces the spiritual view, this concept that human beings are actually a composite, an indivisible mix of a physical body and a spiritual entity.
Drawing from the text, the spirit is inherently tied to your physical body during your life. It's connected, almost like a tether. But, and this is a huge but, the physical body is not all there is to the story. According to this framework, your spirit is here specifically for spiritual training and growth. The physical world is, essentially, a giant training ground for the soul.
That brings us to Section 3, the true purpose of sleep.
Okay, I absolutely love this part because it takes this incredibly relatable, everyday thing we all do and gives it a whole new meaning. The source material defines sleep not just as biological rest for your physical brain and tired muscles. Instead, it redefines sleep as a vital period of spiritual energy replenishment.
So what's actually happening when you're snoozing? According to the mechanics outlined in the book, when we sleep, the spiritual body actually separates temporarily from the physical form. It heads back to what the text calls the real world or the spiritual realm. And why does it do this? To check in with higher guidance, process everything that happened during the day, and literally recharge its energetic batteries before snapping back into the physical body for another day of training.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why sleep deprivation is so incredibly damaging. The text uses the example of extreme sleep restriction, like that 3-hour Napoleon sleep trend you might have heard of. The author points out that people who try this might feel totally fine for a month or so, but then they start getting physically dizzy, they make frequent, silly mistakes at work, and some even end up losing their jobs. Why? Because they're completely starving themselves of that necessary spiritual recharge. They are quite literally cutting off their own energy supply.
Which leads into Section 4, reflection that leads to happiness.
Now, when things go south, the text warns that it's super easy to just jump to conclusions and think, oh man, maybe I'm just cursed, or I must be possessed by some bad luck. But that misses the mark entirely. True self-reflection, as it's presented here, isn't mystical, and it's definitely not about punishing yourself. It is simply about adopting a fair, objective viewpoint on your own actions and your own mind. It's taking a step back and looking at yourself without that heavy protective armor of your ego.
All right, Section 5, practical methods of reflection.
So how do we actually do this?
The source lays out some incredibly practical steps you can use every single day. Step 1, view yourself objectively. Treat it almost as if you were a third party just observing a total stranger. Step 2 is utilizing mental tact. The text gives this great example. Say you're in a conflict, your emotions are ruffled, and you're right on the edge of saying something really hurtful. Reflection is that split second of mental tact where you catch yourself. You realize, wait, saying this is going to hurt them, and you intentionally cool down and de-escalate. It's real-time emotional control.
To really nail this objective viewpoint, the author suggests this fantastic little mental exercise. Imagine taking a snapshot of your current life, or even visualizing your life playing out as a 4-panel comic strip. If you looked at that comic strip from the outside, as a reader, what would it say about your character? Where is the main character, which is you, currently heading? It's just a wonderful, creative tool for honest self-assessment.
And finally, Section 6, Purification, not superpowers. Now, a quick but absolutely crucial reality check here. When talking about spiritual growth, it's so easy to get completely derailed. The text explicitly outlines what self-reflection is not. It is not an excuse to blame others, and it is absolutely categorically not a method for gaining psychic powers, trying to become some kind of superhuman, boosting your ego, or getting obsessed with the supernatural. The author warns really strongly against letting your ego hijack your spiritual practice.
So what is it then? Well, the main takeaway here is that reflection is a core principle of happiness, and it's meant purely for purifying the mind. It's about stripping away the grime of daily conflicts, our vanities, and our mistakes so that we can live a bit more harmoniously and actually be open to higher positive guidance. Think of it as spiritual hygiene, plain and simple.
I want to share this beautiful metaphor from the text. The ultimate goal of all this reflection is to keep the mind perfectly round and balanced. Think about it for a second. A jagged, uneven shape is going to cause friction, right? It gets caught on everything it touches. But a perfectly round mind, it rolls smoothly through whatever challenges life throws at it. When your mind is balanced, you just don't create unnecessary friction with the people around you.
Which brings us to a really fascinating final question for today's explainer. Based on everything we've looked at from the source material today, the ego, the spirit, the nightly recharge, ask yourself this. If your soul were to separate from your body tonight while you sleep, what kind of spiritual world would your mind in its exact current state naturally lead you to? Would it be a place of peace and light or a place of conflict? It's an amazing question to chew on and hopefully spark a little self-reflection for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.